The next Unknown Pleasures event is coming up on November 14th, and it's an event called Physical TV, Temporal Anomalies. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the creators of Physical TV, Richard James Allen and Karen Pearlman, as well as the co-curator of Unknown Pleasures, as always, Bill Mousoulis. Welcome all to the Movie Metropolis.
Hello, lovely to
Hello,
be here.
Peter.
Good to talk to you all. And now that I've looked through all of the incredible short films that Richard and Karen you've been involved with, really amazing stuff. Tell me about founding Physical TV and the strategies you both took to get this process going.
Well, Richard and I both have a background in dance and physical theater, and we had been dancers for many years, mostly in New York and touring internationally from a base in New York. And we came to Australia in the mid-90s and wanted to continue dancing, but also expand possibilities. And one of the things we noticed with all of the touring that we had been doing is that movies were traveling much quicker than we could. We were carrying our bags and our lights and everything for live performance, but the cinemas were, all they do was showing us light. And so that was a kind of a catalyzing thing of wanting to get off the road a little bit. But the big thing was really our deep love of cinema and our excitement about the affordances of cinema and what can happen when you mix dance, which is an art of movement, with cinema, which is also an art of movement.
Mm.
Well, it's a fantastic process, and Richard, I know I've spoken to you previously for the film that you produced, the Giallo thriller. But it's so interesting to see your dance movements integrated into film, and that whole process. And Karen, of course, there to direct, support, whatever. Tell me about the diversified interests and talents you have there, Richard.
Well, thank you very much. Look, I think it's as Karen was saying, we really were interested in we had a company at one point called That Was Fast, which we dubbed a cinematic blend of text and dance action. We really wanted to capture things within the more expanded frame and possibilities of cinema. And one of those things I think we wanted to capture was narrative through the body. So we had this idea of physical TV creates stories told by the body. And it's not that we don't care about language and so on, because actually I'm a poet and stuff, but it's that we're really interested in cinema as a very kinetic and physical medium. And we felt that this kind of connection of bringing our dance background into cinema and then also weaving that into narrative would be really fascinating. So we became extremely interested in the idea, and I think it comes up in some of these works where you're seeing acting and dancing truly melded together into character that moves to tell story.
Uh-huh. I found that so interesting, and especially as I hark back to some of the films of the 20s and 30s, which used movement, and I'm thinking also of Maya Deren and other sort of performers who were filmed, and they were able to tell a story. So I'm interested in that sort of historical perspective that comes to fore in these contemporary films.
Well, one of the things that's on this program, at the Unknown Pleasures program that Bill has so artfully curated, is a series of 3 films that are actually about the Soviet montage era and the women editors of the Soviet montage era who inspired me so much. So I went from being a dancer to being an editor to then becoming a director. And this is, this is something that Maya Deren and other filmmakers, Yvonne Rainer, Shirley Clark, quite a few women in the mid-century were able to find their way into filmmaking from dance through editing. In fact, it's a very aesthetic form, and so I've worked a lot on the idea that editing is a form of choreography. And my chief inspiration for this has really been the Soviet montage era women editors, and the way that they make just dazzlingly kinetic phrases of movement that bring across their world and the world feeling and the the energy of work that was so important to the Soviets at that time. And I've really, in that trilogy of films about these Soviet women editors, I really try to tell their stories in using the techniques that they pioneered. And this makes for, it taps right into my interest in kinesthetic storytelling.
And that's another aspect that I found so fascinating. I mean, Dziga Vertov's brilliant man with a movie camera, and of course Eisenstein's Potemkin, which are masters of editing. But it's also you bring to the fore that there are so many female film editors, especially going back through film history, who have been pretty much ignored, and I'm so glad that in your films, like I want to make a film about women, etc. It's just fascinating stuff.
Well, the two masterpieces that you mentioned are indeed masterpieces of montage, and indeed the editors were women. Now, this is not to say, the editors were necessarily the only people. I mean, my research into these women and my study of these women has really shown that what's happening in the room is what we might call distributed thinking or distributed creativity. That the women editors, the men directors, the women directors, the men editors, that it's a hive mind, if you will. It's the collaborative process between the creative people and the media is what really makes those things into a masterpiece. But all of the inputs are important, and the women have been overlooked. And yeah, I guess I'm on a bit of a mission to correct that.
Well done on that. I mean, when you think about Thelma Schoonmaker, who is such an important editor for Martin Scorsese and so on, I mean, it's people need to be educated about this process. Now, you and Richard have fashioned some terrific films, and the actual techniques that you use, the almost kinetic techniques, some very good actors that you also bring in apart from yourselves into the films. I really admire your whole process.
Well, you should speak to Richard about that, because I think another key role in the films that is vastly overlooked is that of the producer. So, Richard, I'm going to handball to you to talk about the way you bring everything together, and make these productions so well produced.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you. I think, I think this idea, the more I think about it, the word that I'm interested in here is expansion of possibilities, expansion of who we can be, what we can be, expansion of opportunities for people with talent, and expansion of the stories of people whose talent has been overlooked. So that really applies going back and finding the filmmakers who's have actually influenced the way we see cinema, and celebrating them, but also in the present, giving people a chance to do work that is not just inside the tiny box, which we seem to sort of, bury ourselves a lot of the time. So I'm really interested as a producer in, giving every single crew member the opportunity to do their very best work, and also to, give actors a chance to have real creativity and agency in the process, to explore things they don't normally get to explore. And I think that sort of deep trust and that deep sort of commitment to a shared creativity makes for things that are much more interesting. It all has to be framed by whoever's directing it. So there is a frame for that. It's not kind of a mess. But I think that I want to celebrate that we are more than we might think we are, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, they are. Yes, keep going, Karen.
I was just going to say, I think we should, turn to Bill and ask about this question as well, because this thing that he's bringing together, Unknown Pleasures, is such an interesting and kind of inventive, creative space to kind of revisit. Well, what is it, Bill? I mean, you're creating this thing that brings life back.
Well, Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, because I'm a filmmaker as well, it's that doesn't mean that, you know, I can't be actively and passionately involved and invested in like programming and dialoguing, like film criticism as well. I mean, you guys are academics and intellectuals. I've never been an academic and I shy away from academia, but I have done film criticism, and I have like started the journal Senses of Cinema. Um, but yeah, and I'm just amazed by the two of you. I mean, firstly, because in your films, there's two of you who are bold and visionary, and then of course that kind of background you've got and the love of cinema. I'm curious to hear you say, Karen, that you know, you've always been, you know, interested in cinema from that young age as well. I suppose most of us from our teens and early 20s have that, and then as Richard says about the expansion, and because you're multi-talented people, and that's kind of a thrill as well. And in Australia, everything is so segregated and compartmentalized with, you know, roles, and the industry itself has this, you know, hierarchical, you know, compartmentalized kind of system to it. And, you know, when you make films, and so I'm not surprised that, yeah, you look at the women in the actors in I Want to Make a Film About Women, and the joy is there. You can see it, Richard. I know what you're talking about. It's like everyone's happy and everyone's putting into the project. And so I don't know. I mean, most of the time, you know, at Unknown Pleasures, Chris Luscri and I program pretty much individuals with, you know, their kind of visionary kind of creations. And so for us, it's, yeah, it's kind of nice to have the two of you now, this double power of creativity on show. So yeah, ever since I discovered you guys, I thought, yeah, I've got to put you on, even though other people are putting you on as well. But yeah.
Look, we really appreciate your, you know, interest and dedication to sort of looking at this work from the past, because of course we worked so hard on all these films at the time, but and one of the beauties of films is that you can go back as opposed to live work. It's sort of all lost. But you know, I was really touched and moved by what you wrote on the Unknown Pleasures page, and you're sort of, you know, you might not think you're an intellectual, but you're a deep thinker, and it was really touching. You know,
I'm just an observer or something like that. I don't know, and maybe I can articulate things sometimes. You know.
Well, it's certainly a lovely opportunity for us, and we you know, one of the things is this program is divided into two halves, and we've been thinking for a while that this kind of body of films that I actually perform in that have covered almost a 20-year period, they kind of flow together into this suite about this sort of character who falls from the sky and kind of goes back to the sky. And so we've always thought, you know, we're sort of building something here, and we've never had a chance to show it before. So this is literally the first time that body of work has been seen together.
And
we're equally thrilled to show the trilogy that Karen's, you know, conceived and directed, which is, you know, I think I'm so excited about that because I love how it's a journey across forms. The first one is a Woman with an Editing Bench. It's kind of like a period drama. But it has some movement, got some, you know, some psychological things going on in the editing, but it's basically historical drama. You've got a documentary, which also has these movement elements, and then in After the Facts. And then the last one, I Want to Make a Film About Women, sort of brings all that together. So it's a documentary with dramatic elements and dance elements, and it's the flow of all those together as a kind of formal experiment to kind of create a whole bound together by Caitlin Yeoh's music is really exciting. I think it's a really exciting experiment in what cinema can be. And I think it's paying homage to the sort of incredible bravery of those early women.
Absolutely. Yeah. How do you see it, Peter? Like, you see a suite of three films like that together. It kind of is unusual in Australian cinema with short filmmaking to see that kind of thing. And And yeah, that it must be. Yeah, how do you feel, Peter? Like watching all three of those together?
Absolutely superb. I'd love to see some features being made about this because
Well, there's a new one as well, the half-hour film called Breaking Plates, which I still haven't seen, guys, but I'll head
ah
around to it very soon. Yeah.
okay. Look forward to that. But that sort of melding of of history of movement of ideas. Caitlin Yeo's music, which is a beautiful sort of Russian Jewish sort of sound to it, which works so well, and the integration of effects in the films, the actors, and so on. I really thought they were terrific creations in terms of filmmaking, and we don't see that really often at all in Australian cinema. And I mean, this is very European in style and feel to it. And that's why I warmed to it immediately. I thought they, over a 20-year period, what a terrific selection of films.
Oh, well, I'm really glad. That's a lovely thing to say. And there is a feature in development. There are numerous features in development. It's not an easy ask because the films very much are about inventiveness and creatively ambitious form as much as they are about the stories that they tell. So there's definitely a culture in funding Australian feature films that it's about the one character going on the one journey and that sort of thing. And that's whatever. I just think cinema can do more than that. But getting a feature funded, about well, put it this way. If you were Screen Australia and I came to you and said, hey, I want to do a queer speculative documentary love letter to Russian constructivist women, what do you reckon? Can I have $3 million?
In Australia, you're not going to get much of an answer to that. Yeah.
No, if it's not a horror film, forget it.
But can I just make a little plug for anyone, who's listening, who might have some power in this sort of system? I'm following up my expansion theme. Australia is a really rich and complicated country with many cultures and many layers of history and complexity, most of it unresolved. And maybe it would be the right idea to fund artists who reflect that kind of level of inherited and existing complexity, rather than people who just want to borrow a model from a particular commercial system. Well, that's a dream. Yeah.
It is, and I fully agree with you. But we need to have we need to go back to Screen Australia and to other film funding bodies and get them to rethink what their processes and their ideologies are.
Exactly. Don't forget, this is a country that couldn't put the Indigenous vote through. Oh, I haven't forgotten that. I was sort of referencing that a bit. Yes, well, it's very interesting, isn't it? Yes. Just to put things in context.
Yes.
Although, I will say, coming from America, there's a lot that's good about Australia. And certainly, the fact that Screen Australia even exists means, that we're one up on America on that one. So,
true.
I think.
Yeah. That is very true, and I admire both you, Karen and Richard, in terms of having that longevity over that 20 years of being able to persevere, getting some funding, obviously, and being able to make your films, which look great, in a climate that doesn't necessarily reward that. How, apart from Unknown Pleasures coming up on November 14th, and Bill, I'll get you to talk about the details shortly, but have you been able, apart from GIF, where Karen, I've seen one of your films, I'm wondering how else you can get your films out there.
Well, Richard does a fantastic job on distribution, and we're working right now with Ronin, one of Australia's finest distributors, who are packaging together the 3 films about women editors as the editors anthology for distribution. So they actually have 2 of the films already, but we're making it into an anthology and a trilogy. And then Richard and I are working, we have on our new project, we have collaborators in United States, Canada, and Netherlands, who are all curators. So the new project is working with a fantastic 4 DVD set called Cinema's First Nasty Women. Check that one out if you haven't seen it yet. And so with that one, we're looking at film museums and galleries and the kind of context archives where, you know, cinematheques, where there are screenings that relate to past and present as a big thematic interest. And then, of course, Richard just does a fantastic job getting them out to film festivals.
Yes, well, we've been lucky, you know, I guess over the years, our films have played at, I've actually lost count now, but it's nearing 400 festivals. And whether you count that for like, is it one festival, if it plays, you know, twice on the festival or 3 films in it. So we've played at a lot of festivals. And I think that will keep going. And we've been lucky enough with some of the films to be played on ABC and SBS and some other broadcasts around the world. But yeah, it's certainly it's an ongoing question. I think we've been quite lucky, but it is, yeah, it's one that you have to keep reinventing yourself with. And just in answer to that other question of, you know, how we've been able to keep going, I think one of the things is to be sort of swift and sort of see opportunities when they come and make the most of them. And we've had some amazing opportunities, which are sometimes I think it's like a Bruce Willis movie, you know, he leaves the building blows up after him, but just before that, something good happens. So, you know, we got to make things at SBS and at ABC with the commissioning editors saying to us, you know, I was there for 3 years and that was the most interesting thing I did. It almost killed me to get it through, but we did get it through and I'm really proud of it. You know, that sort of thing has happened to us quite a few times. So it's kind of like, every now and then there are these little windows that open where people want to support something a little different. And so we try to make the most of those. The other thing I'd say is that one of the great things about Australia is there's so much talent here in terms of, you know, cast and crew. And a lot of those people are really keen to do something different and something interesting. So, you know, we've been lucky enough to have access to, you know, literally Academy Award winning artists who are actually very happy to work on something different because they work on, you know, really great stuff, but it doesn't challenge their certain aspects of their creativity. So, you know, that's one of the ways we've been able to survive is sort of reaching out to people and giving them opportunities, as I said earlier, to do something special.
There's one other thing that should be mentioned, which is, again, the university scenario. So I'm a associate professor of filmmaking, screen production at Macquarie University, which is a very enlightened university, I must say, in terms of recognizing that my creative practice is my research. So a lot of these films that bring about new knowledge about historical women, about feminist ideas, about film form ideas, they are actually made with research funding in the context of my role as a researcher at the university. And so yeah, I think Macquarie Uni is a real leader in that area. We have a new creative documentary research center that is especially significant in kind of nurturing and amplifying these documentaries that might not be able to be made in other contexts because they're very adventurous with form or subject matter. And in fact, the Creative Documentary Research Center, I'll just give a brief plug for our upcoming festival at the State Library of New South Wales in the last week of November. If people are interested in more about this idea, the expanded notion of documentary that we have and work with at Macquarie Uni.
Well, I wish I was up in New South Wales. I'd be there immediately. Fantastic stuff. All right. So, Bill, let's talk about the physical TV screening, Unknown Pleasures.
Yeah, in terms of when and where, it's Tuesday, November 14 at 8:30 p.m. at the Thornbury Picture House, which is a nice little cinema that does try and put indie cinema on quite a bit, although I noticed that Barbie took them over for about a month or 6 weeks there. I don't think they put anything else on, but of course all cinemas benefited from that. So like they're putting the Nick Cave doco on soon, and they've got their own Nick Cave mixtape, which they're screening, which is really cool. So yeah, they're a cool little cinema in Thornbury, High Street, Thornbury. Information, people can look it up online. Actually, you just go to the cinema's website, and the ticket page will be live tomorrow. People can just book there, and then Unknown Pleasures has its own web page on a website called Pure Shit Australian Cinema, which I enjoyed titling like that. Pure Shit is a classic Australian film.
It is.
It's not a commentary on the quality of Australian film, although it probably is as well, my title. But anyway, that's the details for the screening. Yeah.
I teach the history of Australian film, and one of the things that two students that's another place that's very helpful, where I teach at CAPRA, Global Education Network. And one of the things I really noticed is that there's a hugely important role in the history of Australian cinema played by cinemas. That at certain points, cinemas have opened their doors and screened films. And that might just seem kind of obvious, but, cinemas have a lot of pressure on them. They need those Barbie films, they need those other films. But there are some cinema owners who have had more independence from the sort of locked-in system of distribution that comes out of Hollywood, or the bravery to do it. And that, it seems to me, actually has been a key element in the success of some of the great Australian films, that they actually have a chance to be seen. So I just want to sort of pay homage to the distributors and the cinema owners who step up and support, because it isn't just about us making it, it's about them giving us the chance to share it with audiences, and we really need that. And thank you.
Yes,
absolutely.
Well, certainly,
and a number of.
I was just going to say, in Melbourne, the Nova Cinema is a good example of yes. But sorry, Bill, keep going.
Oh yeah, just a number of cinemas are kind of doing this, like the Ritz in Sydney, and in Adelaide there's a couple. I mean, the Mercury a little bit, and the Piccadilly, and there's a couple of others that are basically putting like a lot of independent features on at the moment, even just for one-off screenings. And so that's really kind of heartening that they're able to deal with the filmmakers directly sometimes without a distributor involved, and put kind of screenings on. If not, it doesn't. If they're not for theatrical runs as such, but they're multiple one-off screenings. So there's some good things happening, as Richard says, with the cinemas. Yeah.
There are, and it's nice to see production is ramping up again. I've just ploughed through 41 feature films that have been submitted for the Australian Academy of Cinema and Television Arts Awards, and wow.
Yeah.
And of course all the short films that have been entered. So anyway, look, fantastic to see Unknown Pleasures, fantastic for physical TV. Richard, James Allen and Karen Pearlman, congratulations on your films, physical TV, on having the film screened as part of Unknown Pleasures on November 14th. And Bill Mousoulis, continued congratulations on co-curating with Chris Luscri the screenings, which are so important for us to be able to see Australian films that perhaps have been neglected or need much more exposure.
Yep, that's it. Yep.
Thank you
so much,
Peter, for your work in amplifying this great work. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thanks very much, everyone. Okay.
Thank you, Peter. See you then.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.